Hello, everybody. This chapter 4, it's not quite as long as the previous chapter, but it has descriptions of experiments that are very lengthy. And I'm thinking especially the Schifrin and Schneider descriptions that are just one paragraph after another without the aid of any graphics, really, or certainly a clarifying graphic. So what I've attempted to go in and do throughout some of these slides is to the best I can to get to the main points, because I would concede, especially in chapter 4 here, that the sheer volume of information with respect to the experiments is a little high and not always in the depth that it could be, or at least there could have been an opportunity to put things in tables or something, although some of the material is pretty accessible. But it has to do with attention, this idea of attention being at the forefront of everything that we do and determines, of course, what we process. You know, she mentions, your author Galati, this guy Brandon Bastian. He had been an Amtrak engineer of a passenger train, as the name suggests, Amtrak, and there had been a very serious accident. But just in 2022, 7 years after the wreck, he was found not guilty. I'm not sure what the particulars were, but she implicated this idea of a lack of attention, and that's what is at the forefront of some of these advertisements about driving while texting and driving while even talking on a cell phone, Bluetooth device, as we'll speak of. So these things are, of course, at the front of our mind when we are speaking of driving safety, this idea of attention. And, you know, I think of when I was young, my driving experience, and I was scared to death of the driving tests, and I'm much older than you are, of course. I began driving in the mid-'80s, and the car that I was tested on was a very powerful 8-cylinder car, which was very difficult for me to learn on because it was so responsive and so powerful. But I'll never forget how much attention it took. I was scared to death. I wasn't very good at it. Merging in traffic, not the easiest thing. So driving requires mental effort, what cognitive psychologists call attention. The amount of attention required depends on the complexity of the situation around you. The reason I'm so late with these videos is I had to go to Houston unexpectedly, and they're in heavy traffic at night in the rain, and that took a lot of attention, but under normal circumstances, maybe not so much. So if I'm driving on a wide street with no traffic, it's a lot easier than driving during rush hour or crowded freeways. And that's true even here in NAC. It's amazing how crowded the roads are in Nacogdoches. So my level of concentration also, of course, depends on expertise. At 54, I've been driving now for 38 years, and I wouldn't say an expert, but obviously I've got a lot of practice and probably as good as I'm going to get. I may be worse than I used to be. So we got this idea of driving needing attention. So driving also required, let's see, I'm sorry, I repeated that paragraph, but driving needs attention at age 16, but seldom thereafter. It's amazing how good we can get by the age of 17 or 16 and a half. It becomes second nature, and it's fairly easy to do, even things like merging. So with practice, the driver knows exactly where all the mechanisms are and how to operate them. An experienced driver can find the brake pedal with little effort. And the practice driver has learned how to operate the car, scan the road, check relevant instruments, etc., and listen to the radio, basically. And as we'll talk about, one exception might be phones. That's one thing that's deleterious, but so many other things can be supported. You'll notice that she uses a sentence there at the bottom. That was the term for cell phones up until about 2000 or 2002. That cell phones were only used in cars because they had to be plugged into the outlet in the car, the cigarette lighter, and we called them car phones, and they were often literally 4 pounds. They were gigantic devices that only made phone calls or so you could tell somebody's my age or older when they use the term car phones. But now this is a quote that wasn't in the main textbook. Like many topics in psychology, attention captured the interest of William James during the late 1800s. He anticipated the recent writings of investigators studying attention when he argued that only one system or process of conception can go on at a time very easily. To do two things at once, he believed, required that something could be habitual. So I'm a habitual driver, and I can have a coherent conversation about politics or something while I'm driving because the driving thing is habitual. I could do math in my head probably while I'm driving because it's become so second nature. So he believed the process be habitual. James's description of attention, as clear today as it was a century ago, sums up the phenomenon psychologists study when they investigate attention. Everyone knows what attention is. It's the taking possession of the mind in clear and vivid form of one out of what seems several simultaneously possible objects or trains of thought. Concentration of consciousness are of its essence, and it implies withdrawal from some things in order to deal with others. And it's a condition which has a real opposite in the confused, dazed, and scatterbrained state, which in French is called distraction, and Zertreit in German. So you can relate to countless things that will deplete your attention that could present themselves in an office like YouTube or TikTok and other things that keep you from getting things done. And even at my age, I have troubles with that.